Important question, Donnie, before we start the show. Who do you have winning the Super Bowl? We're going to revisit this real quick.
I think in the beginning of the season, you caught me off guard, and I picked the Philadelphia Eagles. And so they had some ups and downs this year, but they're still in it, surprisingly. So I think I'm just going to stick with my initial bet and leave the dance with who I brought.
Okay. I think that's really good, and I think that's not
Yep.
a bad choice. I picked the Chiefs. I might be biased, but they're in it too. In it as of the moment we've done the show. I mean, things can change quickly, but we made these predictions preseason. So no one can say, well, why did you wait till January to make a prediction who's going to be in the Super Bowl when you knew who the playoff teams were? Nope, we don't play that way. We put our gut into it, and we have a gentleman's bet, no money. We just get to mock the other person for a year, unless one of our teams don't win, which I don't know what we're going to do with that.
Yeah, I think that we hit 3 out of 4. So San Francisco 49ers are the only ones that did make it. And but Baltimore, Kansas City, Philadelphia, let's go.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Always love football. It's the best time of the year. All right, now back to the real thing. You heard that guy start off the show. It's the Carolina Contractor Show. We like to talk about your house. We talk football because it's topical, and you're probably into football too if you're listening to our show. But basically, we talk building and construction and renovations and DIY projects and house flipping and all sorts of stuff like that. If you hit the website, thecarolinacontractor.com, you can find links to past shows. You can download them in podcast form. We've also got our social media, IG and Facebook and all that stuff, and YouTube. And as I've mentioned before, if you go to the YouTube site, it's a chance to say, hey, I want to connect those voices to something visual. Well, to keep all the women at bay, because we're not available. Sorry, ladies. We use filters, which make us look older than we really are. But in truth, Donnie and I are as close as you're going to find to a Greek god. So when you go to the website, just remember we have filters on, so we look like a contractor and a builder.
You blew it.
I guess I should say who I am. I don't think I've done that, Donnie.
Go for it.
My name's Eric Smith. I work in Home Builders Supply in Wilson, Greenville. Donnie is a general contractor, owns SureTop Roofing, owns Blanchard Building Company. And as a general contractor, he's really the boots on the ground of the construction world. I deal in the safe confines of an office for the most part, selling supplies. Now, me and Donnie don't do business together, but it gives you an idea how we work together in the sense that I know one side of the business that's very important, especially dealing with customers. Donnie deals with customers and contractors and subs and a whole lot of stuff. So we just talk about things that we know about, and that's what we do every week on the show. And if you have a question about your house, you can click the Ask the Contractor button. Goes to Donnie, answers those questions. Sometimes we do them on the show. Other times we do those questions as an entire show. Not going to be doing that today. We're going to be talking about trying to buy a house, especially if you're in the younger skew. But anybody's affected about buying a house, because you, Donnie, like me, are probably locked in at a pretty sweet rate.
Yeah, I got a really good rate, and I would be foolish to sell. But that being said, I've got a lot of sentimental value. I built my house with my own 2 hands. I designed it, drew the blueprints. I spent many a night here with a heater, a radio, and a can of Vienna weenies, just working through the night, man. And anyway, it was fun. It took me about 14 months to build the house, but I saved a lot of money. And my kids have spent just about every Christmas in the house that I'm in. Good interest rate, paid way down. I still owe a little bit on it, but yeah, I don't think it would make sense for me to sell until my family gets a lot smaller. Kids move out, get on their own.
And in my case, same thing, and also would rather reinvest money to upgrade the house than I would to want to sell it and move somewhere else, because again, interest rates do play a part in this. And if you're in the younger generations, I have a niece, and her husband and her just bought a house, and they have a growing family, and it's not impossible, but it is hard to buy a house. And so we're going to go over some of those things today. And we're probably going to try to get a lender on sometime and do a show with a mortgage lender who really can help people figure out how hard. Do I really need to have 20% cash down? Oh, it's impossible to buy a good house today. Where should I live? They give information that the average person won't know. So we're not going to pretend we're lenders, though we might talk about interest rates. But I think from my experience of talking to younger generation about buying a house, their biggest problem, Donnie, is they have big eyes that are bigger than their bank account, and they want like their forever home. I have an idea of a beachfront house. It's just steps off the ocean, and it has 8 bedrooms and 6 baths, and or they maybe even their dream house isn't that expansive, but it's still maybe something in the future. They need to start off with a starter house, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think the internet and DIY shows on TV are to blame a lot for that. You know, these people get ideas off of Pinterest and they shop around, and what you just said, their eyes are bigger than their pocketbook. And that's a real thing because they want all the bells and whistles, and they don't realize that, you know, a starter home is about the only thing realistic for them when they're in a starter job.
Yeah, and we'll go over the definition of a starter home and what that is, because that phrase is thrown around a lot. I do want to give some fun facts. Maybe they're not fun.
Hmm.
Um, some people think if I don't have a degree and a good job and earn this amount, I'm not going to be able to get a house ever. Not necessarily true. The average income of a college grad is $77,636. That's with a bachelor's degree. A high school diploma gets you at about the same age 42,500. Now, right off the bat, you can see there's a big financial advantage to that degree. But the average debt of a college graduate with that bachelor's in the U.S. is 29,300. For someone in North Carolina, it's really high. The
Mm-hmm.
average college tuition, student loan debt, I should say, in North Carolina is $38,695. So if you're buying a house and you have that degree, your salary might be 30,000 more, but your debt is almost $40,000 right off the bat. So a person who has a trade job, which we're big fans of, might actually have a better advantage to get a house, especially if they save, because they're not having to pay off a debt load right out of school.
Not to mention, if they were smart and stayed at home their first 4 years out of high school, they may be making less money. And of course, that was just averages that you threw out there.
Mm-hmm.
But they may make less money, but they've had 4 years to accumulate a lot more for a down payment and so forth. And I just think that, of course, we'll get into that with the mortgage lender next week, but that makes life a lot easier when you can come up with that down payment because you really don't have any expenses except for food and gas. And I just think it makes sense. And I'm a big proponent of trade schools, like you mentioned. We've done several programs where we covered all the pros and cons of trade school versus high school versus college. And unless there's a specific trade that your college specializes in and everybody goes to NC State for engineering or something like that, you know, if you don't have a goal and you're just going for general studies to college, then I'm not going to say it's bad for everybody, but it's bad for a lot of people. And you get 4 years just to kind of waste time. And, you know, maybe you run into your specialty in year 4 and you take a little bit away from that. But really, if you don't come away with any kind of skill set that you can actually apply in a job in year 1, then I don't know if I agree with it. I listen to a psychologist all the time, and this guy, he's great, but he always says that college is just pleasure island for teenagers for 4 years. And he takes it a step further in saying that young men, it handicaps those guys because they don't have to say what they're going to do for 4 years. If you ask them, hey, what are you going to do with your life? Well, I'm a student. And you don't really get put in a position where you have to give a finite answer. And not in all fairness, is not everybody knows what they're going to do when they're 2021. But at the same time, you know, I just think that it's a very expensive thing to come out of college with a lot of debt and a very important point in your life. And those 4 years between 18 and 22 are super critical.
And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, but I think it's a two-pronged approach. If you're a young kid or if you're a parent and you've got kids that are even in middle school, it's never too early to start setting their mind of what they would like to have in life. And not only just a job, but we never talk to our kids about a house. They need a mindset for what they would like to get, and they can't start too early. And the reason I say middle school is because middle school leads to high school. Good grades in high school, very good grades in high school, as a matter of fact, lead to scholarships. So you can still go to school and not pay a lot. We instilled that in our 3 kids. My son right now is in college. I'm not going to name the college. It's an all men's college, so there's only a few in the U.S. You could probably figure it out. But he worked really hard in high school, and he got his associate's degree in high school, and he got almost $250,000 from this school that he attends in scholarship money. So he's going to have almost no debt. And he's not going just for fun or using a useless degree. He wants to work in something environmental biology, something that you can't trade school for. But he knows what he wants to do and he knows what he wants. So it's a good time to start.
I think it's exactly the opposite of what I just said in Zach's situation. Quick question: does he even realize how big of a deal that is?
It that's funny you say that, Donnie, because my wife and I, Kim, have tried to convince him he did an amazing thing, and it's slowly registering. But if you told him his first semester in college, we were blown away, straight A's. The only thing he
Mm,
didn't get an A in was chemistry, and that's basically because he had to teach chemistry 101 college level himself to himself, and he still got a C plus in it. Um,
wow.
but he doesn't realize it till his peers talk to him and realize, oh, I actually did pretty amazing here.
Yes, he
But
did.
we're parents. We don't mean much. Our opinion doesn't mean
Yeah.
much sometimes to our kids.
Biggest takeaway there is how much he took after his mother.
I'm not going to deny that. She's the smart one. I mean, my wife's multiple degrees, masters, and she also, not to go too far off the rails here, she took a finance course through Campbell University and got certified to teach it in high school. So she did basically home ec, budget, how to manage your money. They're bringing that back to schools, by the
Mm,
way. Her first year was last year. All of her students passed it. She got recognized for it, but she's got a certification now in that. So she's the brains. I'm the beauty. We all have our gifts. We just need to embrace whichever one they are. But
nice.
she got from him. Okay, let's go back to this
Back
topic.
to the subject. Yeah.
Yeah, starter house. I want to talk what the quick definition of a starter home is. It's a house in the lower third of a home value in a given region. And the U.S. average, according to Zillow, is $196,000. Let's just say $200,000 for a starter home. That's an amazingly large amount of money. A mortgage on that 30-year with the current rates at about 7% or so, that's about $1,350 a month. That's for a small house, and I'm paying less than that a month for a big house. So having that low interest rate locked in really helps a lot. The other thing you're going to have to think about if you want to get a house is it's okay to get a starter home. That's why they call it that. It's not to be your long-term house, is what your debt to income ratio needs to be. A lot of lenders, again, will have a pro on in the very near future, say 25, 28% of your monthly gross income is preferred. But some people it's 45%, and that's considered not unusual. And that kind of, I don't know, that's a huge amount of your money going to your house payment. And remember, your mortgage payment isn't it. You're going to have utilities and taxes, escrow, things like that. So you can be, house rich, cash poor?
Yeah.
That's kind of scary. So I did have some things I want to talk about with lending, but I don't know if I wanted to get into that since we were going to get a pro on. So let's go somewhere where the big question is that you might be able to help, Donnie. How
Mm.
did we get in this place where buying a house seems impossible? Is it one thing or multiple things?
Yeah, I think that it's the perfect storm, and it all just kind of happened at the same time. So, big thing is higher house prices. My house jumped up in value, what, $200,000 since the pandemic, and the cost of everything has gone up. You think about the next part of that is uh, inventory. We still don't have the small, especially the small houses out there to support all the influx we have here in North Carolina. We said 6 months ago how North Carolina is the third most influx state in the country, and we're behind Florida and Texas. And aside from that, everybody wants to come here. On top of that, where I am, right here west of Raleigh, where the corridor of
Ooh.
40 and 85 are merged between Greensboro and Hillsboro, tons and tons of businesses are coming here. And I mean, there's construction going everywhere. Not only the workers, construction workers, but the future employees. Everybody's got to find a place to live. So I just think that the inventory shortage has a big thing to do with that. Student loan debt, it costs more than ever to go to college now. The tuition, it's just silly. It's about 5 times what it used to be when I went to college. And maybe that's normal, but it just seems like a lot when you see just how much these colleges are charging. And I think that a lot of those are taking advantage of every grant program in the book. And you think about when you get a starter job, that's the lowest income you're probably going to have in your
Mhm.
career. So that coupled with all those things, it's not a good situation. The lending guidelines, post 2008, everybody had to crack down on the criteria to give a loan to a young person. So you got that, and I just think that this isn't on the hard list, but inflation. You got to think about how much it costs for insurance, gas, groceries, and just the cost of living, and that's got to come into play. When it used to cost what 1,200, 1,500 a month for just living expenses, that's gone up by at least 50%. And I just don't like the odds for the young folks. What's your take on it?
Well, the inflation up like a rocket, down like a feather. It's not going
Mm.
to abate quickly, and inflation is tied a lot to government spending. And so, if Trump getting in office can get the Doge, or as I like to call the doggy, the Department of Efficiency in government, that's Elon Musk's baby. Uh, if they make cuts, they can lower interest rates. That can help. But even if interest rates were zero, if interest rates were back to where they were around COVID, the shortage would just take off again because of supply and demand. People will be buying it or trying to buy and trying to build, and they couldn't keep up. Um, it's there's no one quick fix, and I don't have a magic wand description that would say, "Hey, this is what caused all this." Um, I think there is. People need to be honest with their priorities, though. I think there's a lot of people that say, "I can't afford a house," but if you went through a finance course, say like my wife teaches, or a Dave Ramsey or something, and you were honest, you would go, yeah, I can't believe this, but I found $385 more a month that I was peeing away on little stuff. Or, well, I want to get a house, but that car has a sunroof. Or I know I have 9 guitars, but that custom Strat's pretty cool. I want that with my coffee.
Yeah,
So there's a reality of you've got to get into a budget if you want a house, and
we
the house will be the big value.
we should have put a line item in here about financial maturity. You kind of got to get out. You got to pay your utilities, and you got to pay your taxes, and just all the extra stuff that has to go on top of that house payment, car payment, your leisure activities. And I think that's a big wake up call. It was for me. I remember when I got out of college and I lived in an apartment, and I
Mhm.
remember I needed a set of tires, and tires back then were $400, $500 for a set of tires. And I think that's the last thing I ever borrowed from my dad. I said, Dad, it kills me, but I got to ask, can I borrow this money and pay you back over the next couple months? And that was a moment of realization where it hit me like a ton of bricks that not only had my dad maintained a family, there were 3 children in the house at the same time, paying all the bills, running a business, paying all the equipment payments that he
Mhm.
had to make to keep the business going. And he still had a pretty darn good life on top of that. And I thought, I got a long way to go. So that was my wake up call. And I agree wholeheartedly. It's just these kids have to make better decisions with their money, and unfortunately, they just don't have the capacity to do that. They just came from mom and dad's dime in most cases, and until they have to go through about 2 hard years, and it's hard to say that. And like I mentioned with the inventory shortage, everybody, not everybody, a lot of the population bought houses during COVID, and that was right. They were smart. That was right
Mhm.
before the cost of everything shot through the roof with the lumber price increases and so forth. But not only that, like you mentioned before, nobody that has a good low interest rate from 5, 6, 8 years ago is going to sell right now because you wouldn't even make a lateral move at best. You'd have to go backwards, and
That's right.
I don't know. It's not a great scenario, and I know we're going to get to some strategy here, but um, it's the perfect storm. I think that if any of these areas could ease up a little, it may make things easier for the young folks.
Yeah, I think, and let's be honest, we were fortunate in our time frame of growing up, Donnie. We kind of could have it all. We could have the car and the house payment, and those extra things. Right now, it's temporary. We're hoping, but you can't get all those great things, so you got to make that priority. We mentioned President Trump earlier in a new administration. He gets sworn in after the inauguration. There's a new phrase coming out, Trump effect. And we think there's some things that could happen with housing with the Trump effect. Lower interest rates, as we've just mentioned multiple times in the show, tax incentives. He could ask Congress to develop some sort of tax incentive or incentives, plural, that people could have that would help them get into a house. Special loan programs. As I said, overspending is the biggest problem. But I mean, I think I'm not saying the government needs to pay for your house, but they should lower your taxes or give you a break in some way if it helps you get into a house. And I think Trump would be a big fan of that. Wouldn't you agree?
I do. I think that might be the only short term solution, because he's not going to fix inflation overnight. He's not going to fix the inventory problem overnight. He obviously can't just pay college grads more and force companies to come out of pocket an extra 10 grand a year per person. I mean, there's so many things that are long term to solve this, but I think in the short term, exactly what you said, getting the interest rate down, that's a biggie. That's probably the biggest, because it could drop somebody's house payment, $500, $600, $800 a month on even a starter house. And tax incentive on the backside of that. These young folks don't know about taxes yet, but anyway, it may shape what they do at the voting booth. It did me, and I don't think that taxes are bad, but I do think that we pay way too much, and especially being a self-employed person, not very fair on that end. But the tax incentives and lowering that interest rate, if there's a special first-time buyer program, and I do think that there are a couple of those that if we get the mortgage guy on next week, that he's so well versed in that, there are some things in place now, and so that can only get better.
All right, this is Carolina Contractor Show, and we're talking about how hard it is to buy a house, especially younger generation. And what Donnie was referring to is we're going to get a mortgage or a lending expert on the show next week to talk in part of the process of buying a house that we just don't know enough about. But let's kind of refocus, Donnie. Instead of trying to tell people how do you buy an existing house, a few minutes ago, I was talking about if you're in middle school or high school or you have kids in that age, you can start help them focus on how to get a house in the future. But there's maybe a non-traditional way. You talked about even buying land is a great way to kind of avoid the pre-built house that you're trying to buy, is maybe start thinking before the house is even on the land, let's get some land for ourselves. Is that a good option?
It is, and I'm going to talk to the people who have a good living situation right now. So if you have a supportive parent and you can hang out at your parents' place for a year or two extra, or maybe even a little bit longer, land's not a bad idea. My fiance's daughter, she's 22 and fresh out of college, has a great job, but it is an entry level job, and the thought of her having to come up with $1,800 to $2,000 a month to buy a starter house, it just doesn't make sense. And she sends us links from Zillow all the time. Hey, check this out, check this one out. And of course, I always look at the location. I look at the size, and she's sending us 1,000 square foot plans for $270,000. And it crushes me as a builder to know what I could build that house for if she had a piece of land. So I think land is the way to go. And I'll take that a step further in saying that if you could find a piece of land, whether it be an acre to 5 acres, and you could put a much smaller down payment on that land than you could on an entire house.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get that land, this is where the planning comes in, because you could put either a starter home on that, and that would just be for you, which isn't a bad investment idea. But you could also look a little further, because duplexes and triplexes, you're paying by the square foot. So even a duplex, it because it's 2 units, it's not going to cost any more by the square foot. Well, maybe a little bit more because you got 2 water heaters and
Right.
2 HVAC systems, but it's not exponentially more. There's only a handful of things that you have to pay double. And what that could do is you could put someone in the unit next door to you that could pay the rent for the next door unit and pay the mortgage loan for the whole thing. And I skipped a step. The land, if you could get the land paid for in just a few short years and were able to have a good living situation that allowed you to do that, you could use that paid for land as collateral, to do the construction loan. So I say all that to say that young people are going to have to get more creative than ever. And I even had the thought of, if you live in an area with like a downtown portion of where, where we live, all the shopping and restaurants have migrated to the western part of the county. So we have a downtown area that's really nice, and the city's put a lot of money into it to maintain it. So it's not a bad area or anything, but there are a lot of vacant commercial properties. Look or try to make connections. And there are a lot of older folks who have plenty of money who are pulling for the younger generation. You may find someone who has a commercial property who would be willing to owner finance that, or sell it to you in some form or fashion with creative financing, and you could put a little money into that, remodel the upstairs, live upstairs, and rent the downstairs out to a commercial business. And the rent for a commercial business, even in a slower downtown area, is going to be more than what would be for that duplex or that residential unit. So that's one idea. I missed out on a heck of an opportunity in Mebane when I was in my mid-20s, and the lady wanted, I don't know, $60,000-$70,000 for it, and I had little children, and I said, there's no way possible I could do that. And this predatory, how do you say that? What's the right word for that? These people who come in and scoop up commercial properties for peanuts, but
jerk
anyway.
balls.
Yeah, something like that. And the guy came in, and I think he bought it for about $30,000, and she was just ready to get rid of it because it was a headache. I could have negotiated a little bit better and got that property cheaper. When I say it hurts my stomach to ride by there now, it's completely occupied. 5 different units are rented out. The upstairs would have been a beautiful dance studio that I could have rented out, in a prospering, growing town, and I missed out on that. But I said the commercial idea just because that's always in the cards, and that could set you up for a long-term investment, which is a great thing. The next thing I'll say, strategy wise, and I had this idea a long time ago, and then kids happened, but I was going to start something called expandable blueprints, and I don't think that there's anything online like that still, but I had an idea to sell a house plan in a phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Phase 1 being something with a very attractive front elevation, and having headers in the walls where you could actually do the breakthrough to an addition, and having phase 2 where you could add to the sides or the back, or just different things structurally that would support it for the roof line that piggybacked over on the other rafters that were existing, and just having something that worked structurally for a young couple that could build phase 1 when they could afford it, build phase 2, 3, and so on to 4. So, something like that wouldn't be a bad idea, and any architect is capable of doing that. Gosh, if somebody wanted to do that, I would be willing to draw those house plans up for them. But that was my big idea, and I thought about coming up with about 20, 30 plans, putting those online, and just seeing what happened. But I still think that's a good idea, regardless if I ever make a website to do that. And I think the fourth point that I wanted to make, and I pulled all these are out of my brain. None of this isn't off of something I read on Google, but get your kids, and I'm against credit cards,
All right.
but they do have prepaid credit cards where you could put $500 or $1,000, and it counts just like a credit card in terms of building your credit score. When your children turn 18, go ahead, and if they're going to spend gas money, food money, and you're going to help them out, go ahead and get them a prepaid credit card so they can build a credit score. Because if they have 4 years of that and they never have a ding on their credit or anything,
Right.
I can't tell you how valuable that is to have a good credit score coming into 22, 23 years old. So just an easy way to plan ahead.
Yeah, and you just teach them, be careful with it. Say, just go out and fill up your tank with $25 of gas and pay it off, and then go to the movies next month. And after 4 years, well, seriously, after 4 years, you got 50 months of credit history and a great record. They're going to just see that you did use it and you did pay it, and you don't have any dings, and it's automatically going to go up. Don't go.
Yep.
With, beware of the credit fixers though that say, "Oh, we'll repair your credit for $1,000." Usually you just end up out of $1,000, and they've kind of done something maybe underhanded to you. I do want to also add, like I said, my niece and her husband worked really hard, and they got themselves their house, and they have 3 kids, a baby also just born at the very end of the year. They get the write off the whole 2024, and their baby was born on the 30th. But they found out, after years of saying we can't get a house, they found out they could when they asked a realtor. And the realtor said, "Oh, that's all lies about that part," or "That's not true," or "That's true, but here's what we're going to do." And it wasn't but 3 months later, they got their house. So you need to ask people in the business, realtors, lenders, what can I do to get this house? Because the news makes it sound impossible. So if you have a budget, you're realistic, and you talk to people who know something about it, you can get a house, and 7% is not a horrible thing. Please don't say 7% mortgage is horrible when you have a credit card with $2,500 on it at 29.99%. And you're going, well, that 7% for a house is crazy. No, charging
Right.
coffee on a credit card and paying 30% is what's nuts. But you have a connection with a mortgage lender. So next week we need to get them on so they can go in some detail and help people realize, especially the younger generation, a house is not out of reach. You just need to get some knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And be creative and be aggressive. All the things. The houses aren't going to fall in your lap like they used to. You're not just going to drive down the street and see a for sale sign, make a call, do the deal, and you're all set. It's a different time, different day and time. And you young people, there's an opportunity out there
Mm.
to learn a lot. And we're here to help. You can hit us up through the website, thecarolinacontractor.com. Click the Ask the Contractor button. That will send a direct email to us. And whether you're Raleigh area, Burlington area, I have a amazing connection with real estate agents and mortgage lenders, and it's taken me a long time to build these relationships, but I'm happy to pass those contacts on to you guys. So reach out anytime.
Yep, you East of 95ers, you cool people know that barbecue should be vinegar based. I know some realtors in Nash and Wilson County, same type of thing. Legit people who will just do anything they can to help you get a house. So we're in it for the younger generation because our kids are that younger generation. So tune in next time. We're going to have a real knowledgeable person on and tell us about mortgage lending and what you need to do if you're in the market for a house. And you don't have to be young. You can be our age. If you're looking for a house, you might have questions. And again, hit the website, thecarolinacontractor.com. Again, thanks for checking us out. Check out social media. Check us out on YouTube. And we hope to see and you hear us next week on the Carolina Contractor Show.
Thanks, everybody.